Yooka-Laylee. Funded within an hour, fastest game to hit $1 million in Kickstarter, which is already over $2 million. It's Playtonic Games, who are a bunch of former Rare devs who did Donkey Kong Country and Banjo-Kazooie and Viva Pinata. Yooka-Laylee is a chameleon with a bat on its head.
Yeah, Yuka is the chameleon, Laylee is the bat.
It's the animal, the bat, not the sporting good.
Not the Casey Jones weapon.
Yeah, that'd be a weird thing to have on someone's head.
It's a video game.
That's true. I guess a bat is a weird animal to have on a chameleon.
You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is awesome news. This is really awesome news.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the sort of classic open world-ish 3D platformers that all but died. And I think it's because they kind of killed themselves. The market got incredibly oversaturated with them at some point. A lot of people say Donkey Kong 64 was the one that kind of killed that off. It's up there. You know, but there was a lot of really bad. I mean, this happened on PlayStation too. There was a lot of really bad kind of open world-ish platforming games. I would say even some of the Crash Bandicoots veered into questionable territory at times.
So I mean, this has obviously
Crashed.
the Rare legacy obviously comes from Nintendo platforms and is now on Microsoft.
Yeah.
But the 3D character-based platformers, I think, were a staple of PS1 and PS2.
Yeah.
That's where Insomniac started with stuff like we had Spyro and Ratchet and Clank, and then that's where Naughty Dog started with stuff like Crash and Jak and Daxter.
Yeah.
And then, it sort of just went away, and then first-person shooters came up, and that sort of became the new genre du jour.
People grew up.
Well, yeah, but counterpoint to that, I think that these aren't games that we're necessarily playing, but I do think the genre does still exist. This is Skylanders. This is Disney Infinity. I mean, those are this kind of game. They're just not made for us anymore.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
I would actually say that those are more hack and slash games set in a 3D
Yeah, I would say that Skylanders is very firmly rooted in something like Diablo.
There is something, it is very hack and slash, I agree, but so are a lot of these exploratory platformers, frankly. I mean,
I think a lot of those games are interesting. They just kind of lose that kind of the word collectathon that used to get thrown around, which I think the Lego games kind of nail more than anything else.
Yeah.
They're actually the closest thing we have to 3D platformers right now on that collection aspect, and the platforming stuff is obviously still held down by games like Little Big Planet and Super Mario, but no one, even Nintendo's not really doing that sort of Mario 64. Here's your hub world. It's all connected by smaller worlds with different challenges that you have to
I mean, I think also, I think people realize that a lot of 3D platforming initially was very gimmicky.
Yeah.
You know, it was utilizing the hardware. Like Super Mario 64 changed the way games are made entirely. And a lot of people wanted it to be exactly that in the years that followed. And I think eventually it kind of came to terms with the fact that it's hard to make a really balanced game that fits that format.
Yeah.
And when you're making a game that's typically targeted at kids, if it's too difficult or it doesn't work right, it's probably just easier to just do something 2D or to do something that's a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
I actually distinctly hated Banjo-Kazooie. I never got into Banjo-Kazooie, but Banjo-Kazooie came out right when I was, I think, like 12 or 13, and I was already kind of moving away from the cutesy Nintendo stuff. And like I was into Metal Gear at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'd moved on to something that I thought was more mature and older. But also, there's something kind of goofy and cartoony in a way that just never hit me right, you know. Like I totally get nostalgic for like 80s cartoons.
Yeah.
70s cartoons don't do that for me. And I think that there is an entire generation of kids who see something like Banjo-Kazooie or Yooka-Laylee, and they're like, "Oh, that's my childhood right there. I want to go right there and jump right on that."
Yeah.
But and I have that feeling for Pokemon, but for whatever reason, this just doesn't move the needle there.
And that group of people who this is tugging at their heartstrings is evident in the fact that this was funded like literally in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that group of people is where everyone in this room is now, where they are grown-ups with expendable incomes, and everyone's listening to the show.
Yeah.
You're not listening to the show if you don't, unless you're just like, I buy one game every 5 years, but I love podcasts. Like, if you're listening to a video game podcast, you have some extra money to throw around. It's some dumb toy stuff, probably because you enjoy it, or also because it sort of reminds you of something from your childhood. But this is funded entirely by a group of, I would guess, 20 to 30 somethings who are huge fans of this genre, and they watched it disappear, and they want it to come back in some form.
Yeah.
And they have, $15 or $20 or $30. Like, the entry to get into something like this is pretty low. considering that you get a copy of the game, I think for PC and one of the consoles for, I believe it's $35 plus a playable demo.
Yeah, and so
awesome.
you're getting, you're going to get, the game's going to be downloadable when it comes out for PC, Wii U, Xbox One, and obviously PS4.
Right.
Which is super exciting. Yeah, that was a stretch goal that I think was meant like
Which is
immediately.
the other interesting thing. Does somebody can you actually pull up their Kickstarter? I want to know just how many backers they actually have.
Oh, the actual number.
Yeah, but the other interesting thing is that back in the day, these games were $60, $70, $80. You know, 3D platformers, and now you're getting a brand new one for $25.
Yeah.
And they're adding. This is why this is an important story for me as like a guy who used to play platformers like this. But it's also an important story for gamers because watching this game grow and develop on the fly is kind of amazing. They are adding tiers faster than I think any video game Kickstarter ever has, and they're flying through them.
Yeah, their initial like 10 tiers got eclipsed the weekend.
They're actually they announced one over the weekend that was like, we'll hire an orchestra to play the music.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
No.
that's
amazing.
Yeah, it's insane because I remember playing Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64. I was never like, oh, this needs an orchestra, you know. But then you look at something like Mario Kart 8 and you hear the music in it, and you go, okay, that really makes sense.
The N64, that was one of its few weaknesses, was sound. And so here they're going to have an opportunity to improve on one of the aspects of this game that they couldn't technically do before. I don't like Banjo-Kazooie, and I'm still very excited about this. And the reason for that is this has actually happened before in a different way. It was pre-Kickstarter, but there was a period of time that 2D platformers were considered dead.
Yeah.
And then everybody got older that grew up on them and got their own credit cards, and suddenly there was demand again, and a few small ones came out at first, little experimental ones, and suddenly, bam, there was this renaissance of 2D platformers, which continues to this day with games like this, with Rayman just a year ago, or some of the other wonderful things we're getting. Now it's happening for 3D platforms.
I think we're seeing it with the rhythm genre as well, which is really cool. That's just like I don't know. I've been like, I'm 34 years old, right? So I've seen a lot in terms of the video game industry. I pretty much grew up with it, and there were probably a couple of times throughout my existence where I was like, this genre is dead. Like puzzle games are gone now, and no, they're not, because now there's a way to bring them back. And 3D platforming is gone. No, it's not. Rhythm games are gone. No, it's not.
With digital distribution, nothing has to be gone anymore. There's an economic way to make these games and not have to charge $60 on a physical medium and hand them to you, which is awesome.
With not so much digital distribution, but with crowdfunding,
the number is 40,000.
Okay,
it has 40,000 backers as of the fourth day of its.
Yeah, which is like. It's interesting because this is now the quickest. I think it's the quickest $1 million video game Kickstarter.
The
ever,
third
right?
quickest Kickstarter ever. I think
period.
after like the Pebble.
It's up there with that Pebble Watch and a couple other things.
I think it makes sense that you had a lot of people, obviously, that they knew were going to be interested in
the
this. But
Ouya,
the other
maybe,
half of this is the fact that this is Platonic. These are guys that have already made games
right.
that people want.
Right.
They're just like, these are the guys that made that thing I love and that other thing I love. And they haven't gotten to make what they want in a long, long time. And
Besides, they're Platonic. They're not trying to you. They just want to be friends. That was worth it.
That was totally worth it.
Throw it in there.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's amazing that small amount of people can create such a successful Kickstarter. Because what I was saying to you guys off air a couple of days ago was when this was at 19,000 people.
Yeah.
Even at 40,000 people doesn't even chart you on the NPD.
Sure.
Right.
Like that's not even in the top. I don't even think that's in the top 50 or 40 games on NPD. If Sony put out a new game and they said this is coming exclusively to PlayStation 4, it's a 3D platformer, and it sold 40,000 copies, that team that worked on it would probably be dissolved, and that game would be laughed out of the industry as like a bomb. And for years, people would be like, "Oh, that sleeper hit that no one played."
Yeah.
But this, in reverse, through the Kickstarter model, is now one of the it's one of the most impressive feats in modern video game history.
Yeah.
So
It really,
I
really
think it's
is.
amazing that story can be told in different ways like that. And
Yeah.
now we have a hit before the game's even out. These guys already made their money. So
Yeah. The problem with it though is that people have expectations.
Yeah.
So
now, I mean, you don't know, is this going to be like Shovel Knight or Broken Age, where we gave them all this money and something amazing came out of it?
Yeah.
Or
Or
is
it
it going
could
to be a Dutch?
it could fall apart. But
Yeah.
it's hope for the best, and just it is scary though with especially specifically with Kickstarter. You see this I think less with Patreon because more of a sense of like a kind of camaraderie and
We're in
kind
it
of
together.
ongoing funding. But it's also harder to fund like kind of like single packages,
Yeah.
which is what a game is. With Kickstarter, we saw this a lot with the Oculus Rift. When people donate towards something, it they feel like they are investors, and they have like and you know, Oculus got bought by Facebook, and then it's like, where's my money?
And the investors didn't get a penny. Yeah.
And but that's kind of part of the.
I think it's also kind of interesting because for almost, I would say nowadays, for every success you hear about a Kickstarter, you also hear about one where things went horribly awry, you know? And that's obviously the way that we report things and all the media reports things, because there's hundreds of Kickstarters that go perfectly fine or just flatline. Nothing happens at all. But like I was just reading about one the other day about this guy who was making a this modded N64. Did you guys read about this Kickstarter? This guy basically put up a fake Kickstarter for a portable N64 kit. Oh wow! And it turns out he stole all the pictures off of like Etsy or something,
like Ben Heck's website or something.
Got all the money and no one could find him for a while. And he like messaged everybody the other day and he's like, "Sorry, I was on a cruise." And like that sucks. And I feel kind of like the Kickstarter spike happened already. That's though if you had asked me a month ago, I would have been like, this story's done. But obviously there's still life left, and there's still some faith and some trust in the system.
There's still models where Kickstarter works better than Patreon. I mean, Patreon's good for all kinds of things, but you do need that upfront money sometimes just to make sure you can get the people on board to build a big team.
Oh yeah, because this team right now seems like it's like 10 people, and I have no doubt it's going to grow.
Yeah,
you know.
It's wonderful to see it happen. I really am just thrilled about this. Though I've been burned on Kickstarter, but I've also gotten Broken Age out of it.
Yeah,
So.
And at the very least, we're going to get a new 3D platforming game on the PS4.
Now
it isn't knack.
Here is something to think about. This is a bunch of ex-Rare devs. Rare got bought by Microsoft. What are the odds we're going to see this on Sony before Microsoft? Like if they're going to be doing stuff, you can believe that people at probably all the console manufacturers are on the phone trying to like get these guys to be like, oh hey, let's talk. You're
that's tough, man.
So as of now, the messaging is day and date. On everything. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how that's going to work with Kickstarter, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we kickstarted Broken Age, but then it became a PlayStation game as well, and it's not a Microsoft game.
Same. I mean, Shovel Knight launched on Nintendo platforms. Exactly. Right? So I mean, that's always a conversation with these things. Is if you look at something like Shovel Knight, like we all made that a success, or everyone who kickstarted it, but it could have just stopped there. It didn't. Like because the game was good. Like we all got it out the door, but once it was there, the buzz was so strong that it kept going. I mean, it was a Game of the Year nominee for IGN. That's when it stops being a Kickstarter indie darling and starts being a real game that a lot of people take seriously. And now it's got platform-exclusive DLC on PS4. It's got platform-exclusive DLC on Xbox. And, you know, it had a launch exclusivity on Nintendo. So, I think a lot of people might be mad about that. Like, there's this weird allegiance happening right now where suddenly, like, because of Rare and Microsoft, that like it's as if they've been together for a long time. Like when I saw the Battletoads stuff in Shovel Knight, I was like, why? Like no Halo fan really cares about the speeder bike level from Battletoads.
I thought that was adorable myself.
Yeah, you did but you would have loved that anyway. You know?
Exactly.
I don't really know if that's like an Xbox thing specifically. So if Sony's smart, they'll get on the phone and they'll say, you know, throw a Sackboy costume in this game.
Knack.
Put Knack in this game.
No, don't put Knack in. Please don't put Knack
always,
anywhere ever again.
People always like to, you know, do those petitions where it's like, oh, make a new Majora's Mask or whatever. You know, like there's those fan petitions, and the thing is, a signature doesn't really mean anything on the internet. Like you can have billions of people say that they watch a video of a cat or whatever. That doesn't mean that cat is a movie star. You know, it's like that's not how that works. That's not how anything works at all.
I'm sure that'd be amazing. Yeah.
But I mean, like Kickstarter, on the other hand, if you actually have something with a $sign at the front of it, that means a lot more than some signatures. So
40,000 people give you $20 a piece, then all of a sudden you got something going there.
It's a start.
Yeah.